Hey everybody, welcome back to You Are Free TV. It is Wednesday, September 24th, and I'm so glad to be back with you here on the channel, getting on a little earlier today. And there is so much going on in the world, and sometimes it's good to take a little break and check in with things about wellness and longevity and how we continue to bring down our own stress and increase our own health during these extremely intense times. So today we're bringing back the wonderful Chris Burres from C60Evo.com/YAFTV. And Evo.com, as you know, C60Evo.com is my incredible sponsor, and he is always amazing at giving us the real quality information about ESS60 being the purified carbon-60 molecule made in the best lab in the world, its benefits for you, its connections to, the longevity movement, the, of course, life extension movement. He's all up into that, a very athletic and health-seeking person himself, as well as an incredible scientist. So we're going to bring Chris in, and we'll go from there. So glad to be back with you here on the channel. Let's bring in Chris.
Free, so great to see you. Look amazing, right? And I know right before we were on, I was putting on some chapstick, you were putting on some, like we were just doing the final touches before we were on, but you look absolutely radiant today. I don't know, maybe it's a super amazing day. I think you always look good, but today it kind of stands out, and I'm excited to jump in our conversations. I actually always look forward to our conversations. You ask some great, sometimes tough questions.
Awesome, Chris. So glad to be back with you. And, there's so much information coming out constantly, and especially with the new HHS, and there's just this big turnaround, and we're praying, I think, or I am anyway, for FDA changes, right? So that we can be able to talk more freely about C60 Evo and the ESS60 molecule, the effects of very, very high quality carbon-60, and how it could be so much more out in the world for people to understand so much more deeply. So what I'm hoping you can start with here, and just so everybody knows, our wonderful products, C60Evo.com, the capsules and the liquids here. I love this size for travel. You've got the big bad bottle, and then there's even a more giant one than that. We've got the MC2 and the olive oil. And anyway, so we'll get into that later, but can you get into with the audience basically when we call it ESS60, why that is so important as far as the purification of carbon-60 and the creation of quality carbon-60 without the long, we've done interviews in the past where you get really in the gritty, but kind of give the, not nutshell, maybe if it's a large nutshell version of that.
Yeah, well, one, let me just, I'm also praying for changes. I think that the HSA, is that right? HSS? HHS, there we go. HHS, and Robert F. Kennedy. I was actually at a resort at a kind of a mastermind event in Phoenix, Arizona, actually Scottsdale, which is where the Charlie Kirk Memorial was. And somebody who was at the event I was at took a picture with Robert F. Kennedy. He was in the Starbucks at that resort that morning. I was like, man, I wish I could have seen him. That would have been absolutely amazing. And I love a lot of what he's doing for sure. There are so many things that we need to change. You just think about the trajectory of our health in general. I mean, you and I remember having the presidential club and having to push ourselves to do push-ups and try pull-ups and sit-ups and all that stuff. And, it sucked. And I was fairly athletic, and it still sucked. And it's the right thing. Like, our bodies are meant to be moving, and that's gone. And I kind of don't know why it went away. Like, it just didn't make any sense. So we have so many things to change, and I'm with you. I'm praying for some really good changes. When we start talking about this molecule, so just real quick, I know a lot of your audience probably knows I'm holding up this model of a molecule. It's 60 carbon atoms in the shape of a soccer ball. And it was discovered in 1985, and the three scientists who discovered it won the Nobel Prize in 1996. They actually thought the molecule would be toxic, so they put it in a toxicity study. Instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case it was Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group. So that's the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history. It's peer-reviewed, published research, and I'm very proud to share that my lab provided the material, and my lab is actually mentioned in that original study. Now, as we started coming to market and we started bringing this molecule to market, we thought about the supplement industry. And at one point, I found a peer-reviewed published research paper that showed that that research group, they purchased 50% of generic supplements. So not really even in the C60 space, certainly not in the ESS60 space, but generic supplements off the shelf. And then they tested them. And their report was that 50% of the supplements that they tested didn't have what they say they had in them. And I think people all have this kind of understanding. Yes, I'd like supplements, but I'm not sure I trust them. You know, is it just turning into expensive pee? Like all of these things are going through your heads, right? And all these things are going through your heads. And in fact, that research, that peer-reviewed published research paper just confirmed it. So as we were coming to market, there were a couple things that we wanted to do. One, we wanted to test the C60 products that were already there. We tested 22 of the products on the market. My description is woefully low in concentration, except for one of our competitors. I won't mention him. You might understand why, but one of our competitors does a good job. I like him. And then us, of course, had high quality concentration. So we start thinking, as we're going to come on to shows like yours, where a lot of people haven't heard of Carbon 60, are we going to just mention Carbon 60 and kind of let them run wild in the fields of, dysfunctional Carbon 60? Or are we going to talk about ESS 60 and a couple factors in ESS 60? So first, ESS 60 stands for elemental safe spheres and 60 atoms. The element is carbon. And the way we really see it is that C60 is for industrial applications, and there's peer-reviewed published research that prove if it's processed improperly, it's harmful. ESS60 is C60 that's been processed for safer human consumption. What does that mean? When you're isolating the molecule, when you're getting it down to just the C60 form, you are using solvents. Now that you need to be concerned about it, but you also need to realize that solvents are something that are used in the nutraceutical market industry on a regular basis. So organizations know how to work with this. So after you isolate the molecule, get it to its purest form, in our case 99.99% pure, which is absolutely amazing. Then you got to get any residual solvents off of that. You do that with a vacuum oven baking process. So you take it up to a temperature just before it will sublime, and then you pull a vacuum on it. And so you're getting rid of all of that kind of interstitial solvent that might be left behind. And then we actually have a proprietary wash to get rid of the rest of it. And by the way, when some people in the C60 space are like, ours is cleaner, well, cleaner than the stuff that we provided, and the rats lived 90% longer than the control group. I mean, clearly it was clean. Like that's not a problem. So there's nothing cleaner than 90% extension of life in these Wistar rats. And so that's really how we see the landscape and try and push this forward. When we're talking about ESS60, we know that in the marketplace, it's going to be a high quality molecule with the solvents properly removed, and it's going to be a high concentration product.
Fantastic. That's just a great explanation. And it makes me so excited to hear about it. I always get so excited about hearing about your lab and what goes on there, because it makes all the difference. It does, because you're spending a lot of money, and the Carbon 60, no matter where you buy it, is expensive, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just like so many other things, right? And that are quality. And so when I hear about what goes into it and the incredible, like, near heat of the sun, reactor in your lab, and just, it's an amazing, and the amount of money and quality that goes into it, and then to what comes out of it. And it's all, you get what you pay for, as the saying always goes. And also, but you often don't, right? But when you hear about the process that C60 Evo, what goes into producing it, it's just incredible to me, and I'm always impressed every time. And getting back to what you started out by saying, and just a quick reference there at RFK Jr. and you running into him and being in the same resort there in Glendale, Starbucks. Starbucks, but funny. And and then him at Starbucks too is funny, that you both are in there getting your Starbucks. I think it's kind of adorable. But I'm surprised you didn't kind of check out each other, like, in that sense of a.
Well, so I didn't actually get a selfie with him. So I
No,
was at
no,
the
right, but you
yeah,
saw
but go
him.
ahead.
Yeah, yeah. No, you saw him at the Starbucks, right?
I didn't even see him at the Starbucks.
Oh, you
I
just
saw the
knew he was
person
there.
who took the selfie with him, right? And they showed me the
Oh.
picture. And at the point that they showed me the selfie with him, I kind of like reached out and touched him. Wow, you're real, right?
Yeah,
It was,
that's
it's
great.
just super cool. He's such an influential person, and I do think, I think absolutely he's not perfect. I don't think he gets everything right. But I don't think there's any doubt about a pure heart trying to do good for America, right? This make America healthy again. There's just no doubts there. And there's lots of ways to attempt it and do it. I think previously that wasn't happening. And I think now it really is, we're moving in the right directions in so many places.
Absolutely. And especially by doing things right, like how C60 Evo does them right.
Mm,
That is, you have to cut through, all of the noise, right, and get to the signal, as we often say. And so, C60 Evo is all about the signal here when it comes to the amazing miracle molecule that gets through your blood-brain barrier, which has been talked
mm,
about a lot in the news recently and by the president recently and RFK Jr. recently. But the importance of having a strong blood-brain barrier is so important. But then you need things that can go through it that are actually very healing, that can clean up your neurons. And
mm.
C60 Evo is one of these things that, because of its high quality, its purity, it can go through safely through the blood-brain barrier, get into your neurons, and take out the garbage. And I thought one thing that's interesting, and I know you don't want to comment on any of this just because of, I do something different than you do in our
Mm.
professional lives. But, when they talk about Tylenol, for instance, destroying glutathione, right? And these kind of things that they're talking about that lead to these sort of brain difficulties that were being mentioned in that press conference. The glutathione aspect, when you talk about C60 Evo and it getting into your neurons, it works with glutathione and it works with melatonin. And so, would you say that most of us, I won't say most, but in our very addled health world that we're living in the United States, especially, I think glutathione depletion is an issue for
Mm.
people, and melatonin as well. And I'd say especially glutathione and even the precursors like N-acetylcysteine and these things, right? And so when we're talking about C60 Evo, working with those in the cells, in the mitochondria, to take the garbage out of the cells, I want you to explain that process, and also um, what this means when we have glutathione depletion, or how can C60 Evo sort of help along your existing
Yeah.
glutathione, and do you recommend taking additional glutathione, et cetera? So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, let me start at the blood-brain barrier, right? So it's really interesting. As soon as it is understood that something that you could take crosses the blood-brain barrier, the scientific community goes, "Oh, yay!" And then they go like, "Oh no."
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right, because the barrier exists for a reason. It exists to keep viruses and bacteria out of your brain. Obviously, some things can get through, but that's its purpose, is to protect the brain from all the general junk that can typically get in. So they literally are like, "Yay, it can get in there. Maybe we can do something with it." And they're like, "Oh no, it can get in there because so it might,
Yeah.
it might cause some damage." There is some debate in the scientific community over whether ESS60 gets across the blood-brain barrier. I absolutely land on the side that it's getting across the blood-brain barrier. When you think about, there is peer-reviewed published research that the ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. Like that's a challenging thing to accomplish anyway. And so I think the blood-brain barrier is actually, we are crossing that blood-brain barrier. Here's what we think it's doing, and then I'll comment on, where does glutathione kind of sit in my repertoire. I actually don't have any on my desk well, I probably have it on my other desk. So here's what we think that the ESS60 molecule is doing, right? So it's called our BOSS theory. It's the buffering oxidative stress system. And there's peer-reviewed published research that shows this ESS60 molecule getting into the mitochondria. And it's kind of interesting to pause here because a lot of supplements are like, hey, our product is amazing. It operates at the cellular level. And they should brag about that, because there are supplements that don't even get outside of your intestines and add some benefit, but they're not operating at the cellular level. Ours is different. According to our BOSS theory, buffering oxidative stress system, we're operating at the subcellular level, at the level of the mitochondria. So again, we know from peer-reviewed published research that this ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. We also know from way back in the 90s when this was discovered that it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of this cage. And what that looks like, quick little refresher, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of every cell. There's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in our body, except for our blood cells, which have 0, and our brain and neurons, which have 2 million. I will forever be amazed at how much energy our nervous system uses relative to our other systems. Just like any power plant, right? Any energy production that the mitochondria is responsible for, there is a negative byproduct. You think about your car going down the road, it's got exhaust. You think about a power plant and it's got a smokestack, there's smoke coming out of it. In the case of mitochondria, it's reactive oxygen species. These are things that I describe them, if they're left to their own devices, they're like little bumper cars. Everything they smash into, they're causing rust, right? They're causing oxidative stress, oxidative damage, ultimately inflammaging, that confluence of inflammation and aging. And internal to the mitochondria, just like you mentioned, both of them, glutathione and melatonin, are the internal antioxidants that manage those reactive oxygen species, so they don't run around and do damage. But what happens when you stress your mitochondria? And first off, how do you stress the mitochondria? I like to point out, you're alive in modern society, your mitochondria is stressed, right? You've got smog, potentially smoking, drinking, tough conversations, an airplane flight, you've got sun exposure. There is so much negative exposure that's happening and causing a stressed mitochondria. And when you do stress that mitochondria, it's producing extra reactive oxygen species, which that's when we get this oxidative stress and oxidative damage. And that's where the ESS60 molecule comes in. Again, peer-reviewed published research, we know it's in the mitochondria. Back in the 90s, it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles. So we believe it's holding onto up to 6 of these negatively charged reactive oxygen species, so they can't run around and do damage. And then when that mitochondria replenishes the glutathione and replenishes the melatonin, then they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and manage them properly. And that's why we say that the ESS60 molecule is the boss. Now, remember, we're not replacing glutathione, we're not replacing melatonin. We're kind of this bucket. When that extra stress, those extra bumper cars, we just kind of toss them in the bucket so they can't do any damage. And then when, again, that mitochondria replenishes the glutathione, replenishes the melatonin, it can grab into that bucket and grab and manage that reactive oxygen species properly so that it doesn't do any damage, right? So it's augmenting, it's really supporting your body's natural ability to manage these antioxidants. And a summary of what we think it's doing is it is reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria. And, again, mitochondria in every cell in your body, if you're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, you should have exactly what we have, which is head-to-toe testimonials. Now, that's the boss theory. Now let's talk a little bit about glutathione. Now, glutathione, kind of one of the master antioxidants. So your body knows how to make it, and you're right. N-acetylcysteine NAC is one of the precursors to making glutathione. So it's a good thing to be supplementing. It's not in my regimen right now, but it's definitely on my radar. So your body knows how to make this glutathione, right? So your body knows how, if you were to slowly ramp up stress, you would slowly ramp up the production of these reactive oxygen species, and then your body would keep up with that and make sure that there aren't extra reactive oxygen species running around doing damage. The problem is that we don't get this kind of smooth linear increase in stress. Stress tends to spike, and we all experience, you get a stressful email and then the next 20 minutes you're all right and eating lunch or whatever, and then you get another, stressful phone call, or you got to go do some sort of HIIT routine workout, which is a great idea. These things stress and peaks, and your body just can't react fast enough, and that's when the damage happens. So I think that supplementing with glutathione is a good idea. I know there's some liposomals. Supplementing with NAC is a good idea. There's some topical glutathiones that are really interesting. I had a great conversation with Nayan Patel. He's the CEO of Aura, and he has a topical glutathione, which is really interesting.
Can you repeat that, Chris? Because
Yeah.
I just had a little blip out. Sorry.
Oh yeah. So I
that
had
company. Yeah. Okay. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So I had a conversation at, you know, I go to a lot of events, and I had a conversation with Nayan Patel. He's the CEO, I think, founder of Aura Wellness, AURA. So not Aura the ring, but AURA. And he's got a topical glutathione. So you spray it on, and you know, he's actually written a book on glutathione. He's pretty fantastic scientist. And so there are different ways that you can augment glutathione. One of the challenges, I think, with supplementing with glutathione is, again, like, are you going to supplement the moments before you're going to have the spike, right? Like if we think about emails and challenge, like, do I spray, hey, I'm about to get on a phone call that I know is going to be stressful. Like, do I supplement with glutathione then, or I'm about to go do a HIIT workout, which is maybe a little more practical. It's just kind of impractical to be hitting these, because your body, again, can't keep up. And again, that's where we think this ESS60 molecule comes in and does a good job buffering that stress so it doesn't do damage, and then your body can just manage it naturally.
Right. Absolutely. Good point. And I want to check out that glutathione you're mentioning. I'm gonna look it up, see if I can link it below for people to check out. But you know, there's when you talk about, you can plan for stress in some ways, right? When it comes to C60 Evo. And again, I want to remind people that C60 Evo sponsors this channel, and I'm so grateful for their sponsorship. I will be putting on a little ticker on them later. And you know, c60evo.com/YAFTV, code YAFTV for 10% off. And it's in the description below. So please check it out down there. People who donate to the channel get 15% off, different link, different code sent to you, emailed to you. But Chris, in what you're talking about in this, you know, can you plan for stress? Well, some ways we can. And the C60 Evo is kind of a plan for stress supplement, right? It is, like you said, it's protecting its boss, right? It's protecting you against the stress that's going to arise during your day. You always, this is your catchphrase as far as I'm concerned, you know, you take it in the morning, you have better focus and concentration and energy during the day, and then you sleep better at night, right?
Yeah.
And that is like a well-lived day right there. And especially if you're having spiking stress throughout. And the reason I'm holding up the MCT oil is because the medium chain triglyceride oil is, people often say that they use this very much for their workouts, and that both before and after, for the actual boss effect in the body from working out. Can you explain that a little bit to people?
Yeah, well, and MCT, you know, my routine is to have a little bit of MCT in my coffee every morning. So it's about a teaspoon and a half. Well, you know, it's oil and water. So I blend it. And while it's blending, I take a teaspoon and a half of our olive oil. MCT is a great oil. There's a reason, you know, Bulletproof Coffee exists. You know, Dave Asprey created Bulletproof Coffee. And in Bulletproof Coffee is a high quality coffee, MCT, and then ghee, purified butter. And for me, I just don't like the butter. I don't like how it tastes. So, and I don't want all those calories. So I get rid of the purified butter. So I'm doing kind of a bulletproof coffee thing. MCT is good for, you know, we have a US ultra runner, and he uses our MCT product in the beginning of his training block, because MCT can have some hunger suppression, so it can help with hunger, cravings, etc. It's a great nootropic. It's an energy source that you can. So if you're doing intermittent fasting and kind of struggling, you can actually take MCT. MCT doesn't need to be converted. Your body can use it as an immediate energy source, so you can kind of feel that satiation. Your body's like, oh, I got energy now. You know, how do we get to our next meal? I don't know if you've played around with intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
It's certainly something that's on my radar. Well, by on my radar, I mean I do it every day. like that. That's what I do. Yeah, so that's the value in and then if you were kind of talking about, hey, being able to prepare for the stress, you think about this molecule. Well, I like this example. Stress is actually good for us, right? There's a reason that we say you should be doing 4 types of exercise, right? You should be doing some strength training, you should be doing some VO2 max training, you should be doing some balance, and you should be doing some flexibility training. Like, you want to be doing these on a regular basis. basis. And in those trainings, you're causing stress. And that's actually good. If you're not convinced that stress is good for us, think about astronauts who go out into space. When they come back from space, they're kind of health dumpster fires, right? Their bone density is decreased, their immune system is compromised, and that's just by the lack of stress of gravity. So I like to picture us kind of as a prairie, where you have beautiful prairie grasses and flowers. That's our physiology. And the gentle rain is actually the stress that's good for us. And then what we're talking about, the benefit of this ESS60 is when we do stress. I kind of picture that stress being this dark cloud that goes over to the middle of the prairie and starts pouring a stream of water right in the middle, right? That's going to impinge on the prairie. It's going to cause a mud hole. It's going to dig a hole. And you don't want that. That's the damage that you're trying to avoid. And that's where I kind of picture this ESS60 molecule as a sponge that gets between that cloud and the prairie. So it starts absorbing that stream. It's important to note that if you don't do anything about that cloud and it continues to stream, eventually this sponge will fill up and start pouring on the prairie. So you don't just want to live your life stressed. You've got to figure out how to get out of your parasympathetic mode and get into your sympathetic mode. I think I got that backwards. Out of your sympathetic mode and get into your parasympathetic mode. And that's your rest and digest, right? You want to get out of fight or flight, which we are often in. By the way, foods can put us in fight or flight. Like, we kind of don't realize it. We're eating some of these inflammatory foods. Our bodies go into that parasympathetic mode, and you really, sympathetic mode.
Yeah.
You want to be in the parasympathetic. I always think sympathy is calm, but that's not what sympathetic means. It's sympathetic is just fired up. And then so you want to be sympathetic is that fight or flight. Parasympathetic is the rest and digest. So you want to be in that regularly. So once that stress goes away, right, because you want to get back into that parasympathetic mode, then I kind of picture squeezing this sponge gently over the prairie, and you've gotten away through that stressful event without experiencing the damage, or at least as much of the damage as you would have. And that's really kind of how we picture this working.
I love that. I love that new metaphor of the meadow with the rain. It's such a wonderful way to understand it, right? It's very soothing until you think of that thunderstorm and those electrical storms out there that have been so prevalent lately. And that when it comes to heavy stress, you need something to help. And this is probably one of the biggest functions of C60 Evo is combating stress. And also, when you mentioned earlier, I thought it was interesting how you mentioned about the MCT oil being a nootropic, and especially because of coconut oil, the connection to brain function and this sort of thing. And it's interesting also because it has about half amount of the ESS60 that it holds. Coconut oil can hold about 50% of what olive oil can have. So if you're going for full potency of the ESS60, then you want to go with the olive oil. And if you want maybe more of what you were talking about, and
hunger suppression or brain function,
just that immediate boost and that immediate kind of satiation. And I always, and I just want to say, I always wish that we could get capsules of the MCT oil, because for me, like for workouts, for this kind of thing, like to have in your pocket, just because, as much as we love and trust the bottles, there's something about a bottle that always feels a little less safe, right? For just carrying it around with you. So I'm always like capsules. I'm like the capsule queen, love the capsules. And you all are so gracious to allow me to be able to randomly gift 2 bottles to my incredible supporters of this channel every month, just in this random giveaway. And I so appreciate that. I think I will put on the ticker just for a moment here, but please go to the description below for everybody. You'll get all the information that you need to understand about c60evo.com/YAFTV. Code YAFTV for 10% off. And then go to the landing page, read the testimonials, because it's pretty amazing to hear what people say. And I'm constantly getting people giving me feedback who have gone to c60evo.com/YFTV and just had incredible life-changing experiences. Whether that is, like you said, being able to sleep better, being able to focus more, that being huge right now, and especially during stress. And I think that's an interesting, again, I'll say things that I know that aren't in your wheelhouse or, your focus or
Yeah.
legal bounds, shall we say. But the situation of autism and what you said about, for instance, this being nootropic, but the situation of, we have gotten testimonials of people talking about autism in their families and the use of C60 Evo that have been really positive and encouraging around this. And that's, I think for me, that is one of the most exciting things, because of all the, root causes, whatever you want to get to, the importance of healing the brain. And the reason I am excited that it goes through the blood-brain barrier is because healing the brain is so important for the next generations coming up, and just the suffering and intense, just um, uh, vast numbers of increased brain dysfunction, not just in the young, but in the older, in the aging, everything being done to us. I have my opinions about that, and I talk about it on my channel all the time. So it's not, anything we need to get into here, but it's one reason I just love this product, right? Because you don't want to just age, you want to age well, right? And you talk about Inflam-Aging, and we just see the Alzheimer's epidemic. We see just, I think really since COVID and the shots, in my opinion, just massive, massive brain dysfunction across the board, neurological, just, I would call it an epidemic of neurological dysfunction, especially in this country. And it's really, really sad to watch, as well as a sort of lack of passions and emotions, a sort of all of these kind of characteristics that go on what people talk about as the autism spectrum or whatever. And we need to get back to our original, I believe, God created selves, and it has to do with getting the garbage, the foreign matter out of our body. And so that's why I just love this product. And we're at 31 minutes. We're going to keep it a bit short today because of, we talk about this product so much, and I really am just back here again to praise it. And I wanted to know if in this last section you could, I know you were talking about some new research coming up. I'd love for you to explain to people about the situation of radiation and how this is important in the blocking of radiation or the healing from radiation, and also just any new comments, any new information, any new focuses in the testimonials, or just the new news.
Before I start, because I have a couple ideas. Have we talked about migraines before? I don't know if that's something that we've kind of dug into.
You did, but it's worth reminding because it's a pretty big deal, what you said about migraines. Absolutely. Yeah. Give a short version on that.
So first, radiation. There is some. By the way, we're going down a path of like sharing anecdotes, etc. So we'll throw in the FDA disclaimer. The FDA has not evaluated our product. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. And with the anecdotes, I just kind of say, hey, just assume it's not going to happen to you. Dig into the research, understand it. Free has put a link. So if you're interested, you can absolutely try it. So in terms of radiation, there is some peer-reviewed published research on some different animal models being exposed to radiation and recovering significantly faster with the ESS60 molecule. And if you think again about that dark cloud pouring a stream, that radiation is that stream. You've got this ESS60 molecule as that sponge absorbing it to some degree, right? That's just a picture of how we're going to think about it. Then you're going to have that protective effect. I'm going to skip. So when you were talking about, coming out of the jabs and all of this, there's just more inflammation and our diets are worse. There's just more information. So we're hoping HHS will fix is like, let's get our food system, let's get our food supply reasonable because we need to get this inflammation out. And then in terms of migraines, they were often associated with inflammation. And we're in the process of putting together a clinical trial on migraines because of, I recently had a conversation with a lady where she was bragging, again, anecdotes. We're not making any claims here, right? And I'm not saying, hey, if you have migraines, go get this. I'm saying dig into the research and see what you feel. Hopefully we'll have the research to give you. We're going to be doing a clinical trial.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so she shared with me that I'd just gotten her some product, and she shared that her her life had been modified because of her husband's migraines, meaning they would wake up and like, is this going to be a good day? And if it's a bad day, all plans are canceled. Like these were severe and extremely frequent. And what she shared with me when she started taking the product is he didn't have a tool that he could use to even lessen the severity, to even kind of try and address them as they were coming on, and certainly was getting a lot more. And she spent a lot of time extremely grateful that I'd, kind of gifted her some product that her husband now had a tool, right? So when he gets a migraine, he can take the product and it can have an impact, a dampening impact on those migraines. And then also now that he's taking it on a regular basis, there's just so few. Like she's like, literally, we're getting our life back. We're literally not having to plan or not having to cancel days as much because of this change. And if you've ever had a migraine, they're miserable. In my mind, they're so miserable. And I'm so geeky that I have a spreadsheet back to 2014 tracking my 4 to 5 migraines per year. Trying to figure out what caused them so that I didn't have to, hole up into my room, cold room, lights off, no sound, like just miserable experiences. When I started taking this product in 2018 on a regular basis, and I wasn't even taking it as organized as I described, right, with MCT in my coffee, and then I would just take it more regularly. I didn't get a migraine for 18 months, right? So I should have had at that point about 6 or 7 migraines. Didn't get a single one. And then the next migraine that I got was actually because I went off of my product to join a sleep study that we did. By the way, cool little study. 100% of the participants reported improvements in sleep when they were on the product. But I went on that sleep study to join it, went off the product, got my first migraine. So that was a little frustrating. And I will tell you, I will get 1 or 2 migraines per year, but they are not like go in your room, darkness, they literally, I get a little bit of an aura. So it's kind of like a little section of my vision that is kaleidoscope. It will start on the outside, end up in the middle, right? So it's extremely, I don't know if would imagine this. It's hard to read through a kaleidoscope. So reading emails and stuff is not a good plan, but I could do a podcast. I can, do other brainstorming tasks. It's not debilitating. It's infuriating, but not debilitating, right? And so that's where I land. And then I'll just share one other. My wife used to get 9+ migraines per month. I
Wow.
remember the number 9 because she was given a medication and they would only allow her to take 9. So any migraine after 9, she just had to suffer through. It's, spouses, significant others, like convincing them of stuff that they may or may not believe your expertise in. It took me a while to get her to take the product. But when she did, she's reduced to like 1 or 2 migraines a month or every other month even, right? So like from we kind of estimate 13 migraines a month to 1 or 2 every other month or every month, like a fantastic thing. So and I've actually been thinking about my own lack of migraines and the reduction in the severity, my wife's, but it was really this conversation that I had about 3 weeks ago that really landed. Like she and her husband are getting their life back. That said, okay, I got to, clinical trials expensive, but we really need to do something because I've had people tell me that my product is a problem because it often doesn't solve an immediate need. And maybe some of it is the fact that because of the FDA restrictions, we can't speak to some immediate needs. Like that's probably the bigger situation. But migraines, once we do a clinical trial, will be addressing something that a lot of people really need a solution to. And so, yeah, and I do think all of that is related to inflammation. We also have to be careful, and I'll talk real briefly here. We have to be careful about inflammation because the FDA equates conversations of inflammation with the diseases of inflammation, which are also the diseases of aging. So arthritis, Alzheimer's, you mentioned these, cardiovascular disease, cancers. So the FDA, if they hear me say we address inflammation, what they hear, what the FDA hears, is me claiming that we cure cancer and cardiovascular disease, which we are not claiming, right? There is so much more research that needs to be done. There's lots of indications that that research would come out positive, but there's a lot of research that would need to be done to be able to make those claims. And so that's the kind of the tightrope that we walk, and I'm hoping these clinical trials with migraines will get us on the other side, on the right side. I don't know what the right side of the tightrope. I guess it's the landings on that tightrope is the other side.
Fantastic. Yeah, that is so great. And I just love hearing the story about the migraines, because and that other people having the same experience, because it's torture. It's torturous. Yeah. Migraines are just torture. And so to find something that's helpful rather than harmful to treat them is absolutely incredible. So as you can't and didn't say it, basically, I'm really looking forward to these amazing, this study. That's just great. And, I just can't wait till more studies are done. And I just so wish I could put you in a seat next to RFK Jr.
I was so close. He was at the Starbucks in the same resort.
I love it. But I do hope there is a day coming when they will be holding panels on ESS60. That there will be this kind of research that is invited into those upper echelons, because if we can really revolutionize the medical industry into a industry of healing, and to connect more and more with the natural therapy world, whatever you want to call it. Why it had to become unnatural in the first place, we don't know. And there's nothing against some synthetic medicines are extremely important and groundbreaking, but what we want is integrity. We really want the unification. And so I'm just praying and praying that the ESS60 molecule is getting into RFK Jr. I know that Patty has sent him several deliveries. So I always pray we're going to hear back from RFK Jr. And so perhaps it will happen. But on the deeper level, I wish there would be a committee getting together to talk about ESS60 and some other really, really top quality longevity supplements dealing with the, when you get to the core of it, it's cellular health, right? And you can get into the anti-aging movement or the longevity movement or life extension, whatever you want to call it. It just means being healthy till you die. It means being that person that's healthy, then you go to sleep and then you're dead. And, that's kind of what we all, wish and pray life could be. And that's why so many people seek out products that can go deep into the mitochondria and clean out the garbage and create just a ongoing healthy cellular regeneration process. So that's what we've got here with C60 Evo, in my opinion, for entertainment purposes only. And check it out, c60evo.com/YAFTV. Use the code YAFTV for 10% off. 15% off for people who donate to the channel. Check out the MCT oil. These are my two favorites. We also have an avocado oil. You can kind of see it in Chris's, next to Chris's head there, the green label is the avocado oil. And people love that, especially in salads and food. It's about 75% of the amount of C60 in there. So, and a lot of people love avocado oil. And so it kind of depends on what's your favorite oil in a way. But for me, I love the capsules because you can carry them around in your pocket, and I just like it that way. And I love the olive oil, and I do plan for the stress. Taking them before a hard event or after a workout or this kind of thing. Reach in my pocket. I love it. And so check it out again. I'll do the ticker real quick while we sign off. So, Chris, thanks again so much. I always love talking to you, and you always just kind of re-energize me about of honestly the process of it being made and all the great stories and anecdotes. Is there anything you want to leave us with here at the end?
Just thank you. When they go to that link, I always like to recommend there's a discount. I think it's like a 20% discount for going on subscription. So take it. We like to encourage people, take advantage of that discount. Our customer service team has 1,000 5-star reviews on Google. They're not trained to talk you out of a subscription. So go ahead and take advantage of that subscription, please.
Thanks a lot, Chris. We'll see you later. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and take great care. Can't wait to hear about the study. Bye for now. All right. Well, everybody, thanks so much for watching the show. So appreciate you coming on today. If you want to get more information about c60evo.com/YAFTV, you see the truck ticker running down the bottom here, and just go to the description below. You'll find out everything you need to know. So I'm so glad to be back with you today, and I will be back again very soon with the news. We'll get into it, and you are free. See you next time.